All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Critical Conversations. Today, I have Laurie Parente with us, and she's coming to talk all things spiritual connection, inner wisdom. And I'm really, really excited for this conversation because I believe, very similar to Laurie's beliefs, that we have so much more inner wisdom and ability if we just tune in to connect to it, take time to get to know ourselves. Laurie, will you give us all a brief introduction about you and how you got into this beautiful line of work?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me here today. I call myself an angel medium, an intuitive guide, and an energetic healer. So my passion is teaching people how to connect into their own inner wisdom and also connect with their team and spirit, which can be their loved ones, their angels, mentors, guides. And how I got into this work was I was always connected as a little one. I was very sickly. I was in the hospital a lot, and the angels were my friends. They were, what adults thought at that time were my imaginary friends, but they were my friends, and they got me through that time. Probably around the age of 4 or 5, it became very evident to me that the adults in my life didn't really believe me and didn't really think that this was something I should be talking about. So I kind of stuffed it down for a long time. And even though these abilities were always there, I was always having dreams and connecting in with people's loved ones. And I kind of stuffed it down until, like my mid 40s, when I think sometimes it happens to all of us. The pain of being inauthentic to who we are gets so huge that we just can't ignore it anymore. And the day that I made that decision, I would just happen to be on Facebook, and here was a course on mediumship through James Von Prague, and I just went in, and it just blew me wide open again. And then I learned so much. I took so many courses, but I also learned so much internally from my team. I set up a place in meditation where I would go, and I was like the boardroom CEO, and my team would be all around, and I'd be, who wants to teach me today? So I learned on the internal and on the external, and kind of combined that wisdom and knowledge. And then I just started telling people about it, and it eventually worked its way into a business.
Amazing. I have a question about what was that period of your life like, from age 4 when you were identifying that this isn't really quote unquote what we should be doing or talking about, right? What was that period of life like for you from the age of 4 to your 40s where you felt that inauthenticity? Kind of what were the symptoms?
So what I know now is when we stuff down any part of ourselves, we stuff down all the good stuff as well, right? We stuff down our joy, we stuff down our creativity. So it was many years of crippling shyness. Like if anyone spoke to me bright red in the face, couldn't speak, completely lost my voice, lost my laugh for years. I would laugh silently. I would just shake. And it just, so much worry, anxiety, depression, up in the middle of the night, all of those frequencies I played in so that when I was ready to release them, I knew what they were, right?
Yeah.
Just the overthinking and the indecision and really looking to others to make things right for me, that external focus. It was interesting because I managed to get married, have 4 kids, have a great career teaching music. But I was really half of myself.
So interesting. And I love that you bring up you taught music. I feel like there is a realm of performance arts and artists in general that are very intuitively driven. And through their art is how they're expressing. Was that kind of how you kind of coped, you think, through the music?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm a pipe organist and pianist, and when I would play, the world just fell apart. It was like going into that zone. And I didn't really recognize it at the time, but that's when I would get so many messages. And I just maybe thought that was normal, but, didn't really know that when we're playing music, we go into that other part of our brain and we get out of that thinking part, right? So definitely music saved me through those years
Yeah.
for sure.
What was it like you said you're married and you have 4 children. What was that experience like, being like, okay, you guys, I'm going to do this new thing now?
Well, interestingly enough, as much as I thought I was shut down, they always saw it, and things would always leak out. The um, example that I go back to often is my youngest daughter was in a psychology class in high school, and the teacher was debunking mediumship, and her friend turned around and said, "But isn't your mom a medium?" And at that point, I didn't even feel like I was out of the spiritual closet. But I think in conversations with my kids' friends and everything, things would just flow naturally. And I wasn't really conscious of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So interesting. So unconsciously you were trying, like your inner being, right, was kind of trying to step forth and be like, no, you got this, but you weren't cognizant of it. That's so interesting. So what's it
Right.
like now relating to the world as someone who really has a really deep connection with both realms?
It took time to realize that I was in charge of it. When you blow wide open like that, and then you all of a sudden, go to a mall, you're just like,
It's a
whoa.
lot.
Or God forbid you go to a nursing home, like an old like, wow. So I worked with a shaman who taught me how to close all the windows and the doors. And that was a game changer for me, because now I can freely travel. I can be on a plane without people trying to talk to me. I'm in charge of it. And I think a lot of people think that they would not be in charge if they went down that road, that they would be so overwhelmed. But there are things to put in place. And if you go into it knowing, no, I get to choose how this works, it can be really, really exciting.
Yeah. Oh my God. I have so many questions, but I want to start with, because in my line of work, I work with female entrepreneurs, and I mostly focus on a lot of like business tactical, but I bring a lot of this, universal forces, the feminine, the masculine, what's your human design, your sign, like all of it. Because I think that while we are humans in this current reality, we are so much more as spiritual beings, and I believe that a reflection of our personal life, our business life, is all coming from our spiritual self and our beliefs and our thoughts. And I know that my personal transformation came through that same kind of, like, I kept hitting that wall of inauthenticity, and I didn't recognize it at the time. And so I'm curious, when you are, supporting people, what is it that what's the wall that they're hitting up against? Because I think authenticity and vulnerability are really important to help our broken world. But I don't think we're aware of it, right? Like, just like you were saying, you were kind of unaware that you had this gift.
I think the thing that I bump up against mostly with clients is worthiness. It's such a big piece of, you can hear the words, you don't have to be or do anything to be worthy. You're worthy just because you're here. You've just forgotten that you're worthy. And you can hear those words, but embodying it is a totally different thing. So we've been taught that only certain people can connect to spirit, only certain people. You have to go to a medium, and it's scary, and they might bring in weird, dark energies and all this stuff. We've been taught, we have all these beliefs. So even if we have that true intention to connect, we've got to get underneath and release those beliefs in order for it to become something that's easy for us. It's not a hard thing to do, to connect into your team. It's just a really different way of being. So you have to let all of those beliefs, all that conditioning, all of the things that we've brought in our genetic line,
Yeah.
we have to let them go, and realize that we don't just have 5 senses. We have 6 senses, and maybe up to 12, but that's another conversation. But we have this ability, and we're not meant to let's see, we come here and we forget for a moment, but we're meant to remember. We're meant to step into those spiritual connections and really release that feeling of being alone in this life, because we're not. We have these huge teams that can help us.
Yeah. You mentioned a way of being, and I love this. I talk about this all the time in my work that I do. It's not just, oh, we're going to sit down and we're going to meditate and we're going to feel good in our meditation. It's like we have to get up and change our way of being. So tell me more about when you mentioned a way of being. What are you talking about?
So, if we're looking at, things that I find the quantum field, that all that work just so exciting, and everything is frequency, everything is energy. So if we have a belief that we're not worthy of something, we can go back within our timeline and find that belief and extract it and put a new belief in. And then we can send that frequency out, and the universe comes back to us and aligns with that frequency. And that's what I find so exciting, is that science has caught up to where spirituality has been for so long.
Yeah. Yeah. What are your biggest hurdles you're in Canada, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, super similar as far as, we live in a very busy culture where people are just constantly busy. What is the number one thing getting in the way of us being able to access outside of the worthiness piece? What's getting in the way?
Our thoughts.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Tell me more.
Absolutely. We're stuck in our thoughts. We have these thoughts going round and round and round and round. And I'll paraphrase, but Einstein said, you cannot solve something from the same place that created it. So if we have a problem we've created in our thoughts, we're not going to solve it in our thoughts. We're going to solve it in our hearts. And it doesn't matter how many times you think through a problem, it's not going to change. And when we really look at our thoughts and we sit down and we write out how we are talking to ourselves in our brains, we realize that if we talk to anyone else that way, they would never be friends with us. Or they would walk away. And so we have all of these thoughts that we just beat ourselves up, and we're so mean to ourselves and we don't even realize it. So when we can look at our thoughts, and then we can be, okay, you know what, thoughts, you get to have a break. We're not going to be thinking anymore. And we figure out how to move that energy from our head to our hearts, which is as simple as taking our hands and just pulling that energy down and opening up our hearts and asking our hearts about the problem that we have or the struggle that we have, and listening for the answer. And most times when I'll have people connect into their intuition, their first reaction will be, well, I got an answer, but it sounded like my voice in my head. And I will say, well, what did it say? And often those first interactions will be like, you know what, you're going to be okay. It's all right. We love you. Like, there'll be stuff, and I'll say to people, would you ever say that in your head? That it's going to be okay? And they're like, no. So it may sound like your own voice, but it's how does it feel? And would you say that to yourselves? I had a client the other day that the first message that she really connected into was, you are loved, you are light, you are truth. Mm-hmm. And she said, but it sounded like my voice. I said, well, would you say that to yourself? No. Right? So it's listening to the message. And as you just grabbed your heart, how did that message feel?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Oh, that's such a beautiful moment for that client. I can feel her. Yeah. Really grasping that. It's so interesting because I think when, I grew up Christian, and there are barriers around the systems and the religions that we've created as a society. And I think the most interesting thing that has come about of my journey, and I wouldn't call myself nearly probably as intuitive guided as you are, but I am an intuitive person and I'm trying to tap into that magic, is it's almost as if the world has taught us to separate the two and be so hyper aware that we are not one. But the reality is if you go into the scriptures and all the different things, the whole message is it is you. You
Right.
are the one. And so what is it that you believe in all of this, Laurie, that I mean, is it just this world that we live in? Like, what is the barrier that is cutting us and separating us?
So if we look back at the scriptures and Christ's teachings, and I was raised Catholic, so there was a lot of letting go for me as well. He said, "You are the light within."
Yeah.
Right? And then what happened was religion became a business. And I think the thing that is separating us from having that sovereignty where we go within and we make our decisions from within is the culture of business.
Yeah.
Is profit, is the bottom lines of these big companies keeping us in fear and making us feel like the answers are outside of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. So interesting because I'm in America. It's election day as we're recording this. You guys are going to get this in 2025. But it's funny because all day I feel like I've been in the battlefield of energy and just being like, I don't want any of this negative energy. And like text messages, like I'm like, I'm not even going on social media today because it is a business. America has been made to be a business, and it is all about profitability. And I think that if people really sat down and looked at it, with their logic, but also with their love, right?
Mm-hmm.
They could see how there is this huge division happening, and we're so disconnected and we're so unregulated as a society. And that actually isn't what's meant for us, right? And we're meant to be together in community, but also be with ourselves and like that inner within, right? Like I don't have anxiety today because I trust myself. I trust the path. I've done the participating that I can do as a human who's playing in this system. And so how are you getting that message out to people? Because I think that that's like the barrier of people coming in to do this type of work. There's that like disconnect. So how are you communicating that this really is magic and it really is something that everyone, like, you don't have to be sitting and feeling anxiety right now, but you do have to go within and know yourself, trust yourself, love yourself, and also trust the plan and know that like, okay, I've done all the participating I can do. Now I have to really let it go. And that's trust.
Right.
So anyways,
Right.
Tell me, I'm so curious.
Well, you just said it's about discernment and trust, right? And taking the actions aligned with that inner discernment. Really knowing your energetic yes and no, asking your body, what does my yes feel like? And really knowing what people will call a holy hell yes, like having that yes come into your body that you're just like, oh yeah, here we go. This is a yes. Or that no, that pit of the stomach feeling that kind of moves you back from things, telling you to stay away, or the not right now. There's really only 3 things you need to know: no, yes, or not right now. And once you develop that inner discernment, that's really going to alter the way that you view the world, the way that you view your relationships, and the way that you view yourself, because you will just trust. And trust is so important. And we've been taught not to trust ourselves, how we're dishonoring ourselves in that way.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many ways we can take this conversation, but I want to take it back to when you decided to tap into your magic and come into your truth. What was that time of your life like as far as dealing with the 3D world that we live in? I say all the time to my clients, like we live in a 3D world. So we do have to play the game a little bit. And so how did you tap into your magic and participate in the world?
It was a very exciting time. Right away, my guides showed me that when you're in like a gestation phase and you're starting something new, or you're opening up, you're reclaiming something that you were always meant to reclaim, is to just kind of keep it to yourself. for a little bit, or talk to people who are very heart-centered themselves, who will be supportive. So I did find that kind of for the first couple of years, it was just my thing, other than a couple of friends I knew I could talk to. And then it just got to the point where my guides would start saying, it's time to start talking to other people. It's time to start speaking your truth. And of course, some people mirrored back my insecurities, and that was what needed to happen. But interestingly, eventually they all came around because messages would come through that they couldn't deny.
Yeah.
And then that changed their perspective. And I find that even if people don't believe it, or they think it's scary or weird, if we can just have a conversation, they will start to see that it's actually really innate to who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like they're right there, right?
Yeah.
They're right there. And
They're
I think
right there.
if we slow down enough, we can really like feel them in the moment. And I'm like, oh my God, I need to I'm going to do a call with Laurie. I'm sitting over here being like, I know they're right there, but I still haven't given myself the permission to connect. Right. So
Right.
what
And
was it?
sorry, I'll just
No,
say on
go.
that point, I see many grief groups, many things in my line of work where people will say, it's been 4 years, they've never come to me in a dream, they don't connect, they don't leave me feathers. And then other people saying, quite the opposite. And it's sometimes a hard truth for people to hear when they're grieving, but it's not your loved one who's not connecting, it's you. It's you that's not giving the permission. There's something that's holding you back. And let's look at what's holding you back, because you're absolutely capable of connection, of getting these signs, of having these dreams, of having these visitations. But it's 99% of the time, it's fear that's holding you back. So
Yeah.
what is your fear around this? And then when we can talk about it, when you were 6 years old, you went to Sunday school and they told you talking to dead people was necromancy and it was against God and all this stuff, and once we find that, and then they can see that it's not actually their belief, it's just a belief that's been put upon them.
Yeah. Ugh, so interesting. Yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, I know exactly. Well, I'm so curious. So for you, when you learned how to kind of create that connection, how long did it take for you to be able to turn, like, I think you mentioned closing doors and windows, because I think that is for me, it's a very real thing where I think the fear is like, if I open this up, I'm going to crack open some crazy shit. And I can't hold that energy for everybody.
Right. And usually these huge fears just come down to one simple solution, right? So I teach people to set the intention. I intend to only meet with beings of my highest good, benevolent beings who are here to help me. We set the intention so that we don't even go there. Personally, I had one time I was in a meditation and I had something funky come in, and I was just like, nope. I just got out and I said to my angels, not interested. Like, just do whatever you need to do to keep that. Like, it's very practical, right? Just do whatever you need to do to keep that away from me. I only want to connect with the highest good and the most beautiful beings who are here to teach us.
Wow.
And so setting that intention with your heart, believing in it, is all you need to do. And
Yeah.
if you can imagine, that intention will wipe out years of fear.
Interesting. I love that. Intention is so powerful. And I think that comes through a lot in what I teach people in business. It's half of the obstacle is just what's your intention behind the email, behind the post, behind the sales, whatever it is, behind the creation. I'm curious if you can share one of your most favorite experiences that you either had personally or maybe with a client, just to kind of give an example of how powerful this practice can really be.
This is me listening and seeing what's going to come through as the highest good for your listeners. Okay. So I had somebody sign up for for a session, and her aunt actually signed her up. And it was the day before her wedding, and I had no idea.
Oh my gosh.
Once I found, I was like, why why am I seeing this and that? She said, well, I'm getting married tomorrow. Like, oh my gosh, what are you doing with me? Right. And she just really wanted to connect with her grandfather. She wanted to know he was going to be at the wedding, but she kind of didn't believe. Her arms were crossed. Her energy was small. And I just connected in and I said, okay, I'm getting images, but they're wanting you to put them together. I said, I see flowers. I see a dragonfly, but it's like in a spiral. And I see old-fashioned writing. And she just burst into tears because the night before at her rehearsal dinner, her maid of honor had given her a silver dragonfly to go around the bottom of her roses that had engraved her grandfather's writing on.
Oh my gosh.
Right? So
Wow.
They didn't come through and say, oh, I see that you've got this dragonfly. They wanted her to put it together so that she could feel without a doubt that, and he kept saying, I'm going to be with the flowers, was the first message that came through. And then they showed me the images. So for her to know without a doubt that he was with her on her wedding day changed her life. And now she's teaching galactic astrology or something really cool like that.
Oh,
right?
That's amazing.
Like we just need that. Sometimes we just need that one confirmation and it just blows us wide open.
Yeah. I feel like that would be such a risk to do a call before your wedding day because that could have gone two very different directions, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what a brave soul for doing that. Okay. I think we have time for one more. Do you have another fun share or something that you want to? Yeah.
So beyond, connecting with our loved ones, there's so much opportunity for healings. A lot of times we are holding trauma in our bodies, whether it's ours, whether it's somebody else's, whether we're clearing stuff for our ancestors, and we'll have these physical symptoms. And when we can go in and find them and find out what they're about, we truly can clear them. So I had a client who had terrible headaches her whole life, had been through all of the doctors. And this woman's in her 60s by now. She had been to everything and she was living on Tylenol. And we did a guided meditation that my guides brought through for letting go of the feelings of not being enough. And it opened up something for her. And it wasn't until 3 days later that she messaged me and said, I just realized I haven't had a headache for 3 days. I didn't even notice.
Crazy.
So we're holding a lot of old stuff. And when we release it, there's healing. When we bring more light into that area, there's healing available for us. There's deep healing through, shamanic journeys, through sound healings. There's so much more available to us. We don't always need to be dependent on that pill from the outside. I'm not saying I'm not a doctor, do your thing, all that stuff. But there's opportunities to heal in really, really tangible ways.
Definitely. I see that a lot through many modalities. And I've done a lot of that myself for my allergies through Psych K and different practices. Tell me, for you, when you are initially, meeting with somebody, how hard is it for you? Because you have your team and I'm sure that they have their team. Is there ever like a moment where you're like, okay, guys, slow down or settle down or, because I would imagine the people who we haven't been able to connect with, the angels, the guides, they're probably really eager for someone to be like, oh my God, just tell them this one thing. So yeah. Have you had that experience where it's just like too much at once?
Definitely in the beginning. But again, now setting intentions, my team's connecting to your team and you're sending messages back to me. And I say like one at a time, don't overwhelm me. Let's go slow. Make sure you're sending me images that I'm going to understand, pick my brain, do whatever you need to do. and make this the best experience for the client, because it's always about, how can I best serve them in their journey that they're on. And I want to make sure that I'm not just popping off random messages. Let's make it specific and let's make it impactful.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Do you see, I'm bringing up this question because I'm thinking about all the listeners who maybe have watched different Netflix series, the Teresa whatevers of the world. How realistic is that? And what would you say to somebody who is like, that can't be real?
I mean, I think everything has been Hollywoodized to a bit, but the core of it is true. I mean, they're bringing through messages to people. I just listened to Teresa Caputo talking about her life, and she said she just wants people to know that there's more and that they can have messages of love and support. And they bring through specific things so that people know this is real. And that's what I find in my work. Something will come through that I have no way of knowing. It's not me. It's their people. And once you know that connection, then it's up to you to expand from there. I know that a lot of people will say, I don't want to go to a medium because then I'm just going to miss them more. But it's like that gateway. It opens you to more.
Yeah.
And then it's up to you where you go from there.
Yeah. It's and it again goes back, your words, the intention. If you intend to open that gateway and have those little moments, for yourself, that's kind of behind it. So tell me, for you, when you get off a call with somebody, how are you clearing your energy? I'm always curious about people's practices for clearing space.
So I clear before and afterwards. It's something that I call soul sanctuary. This is what I learned and developed through working with a shaman, where I go into a specific place in my imagination. It has a certain door. There's a certain couch I sit on. Like it's a big thing for me, and I just clear in there in a flame. It's usually a violet flame. And then same with afterwards, I'll go back and just clear any energy. I do find that sessions for me are very exciting. So I'm not so much like people will say they're drained afterwards. I'm really amped afterwards.
Yeah.
And so I have to be sure that I go in and clear anything so that I'm not like totally hyperactive for the next 4 hours.
Yeah, I hear that. I'm always super invigorated after my calls. And I think that is a true testament to being on your aligned path and doing the work that you're meant here to bring forth. Laurie, how can people connect with you? Where do you hang out as far as, social media platforms or different things like that?
So I'm on Instagram, just at Laurie Parente, and I've just started a YouTube channel where I drop a video every Friday. So it's just small right now, but I'm hoping to get to that 50 mark so that I can start going live. It's coming. And then my website's just laurieparente.com.
Okay, amazing. This was such a fun and unique conversation, and I'm really hopeful that if anyone listening is on the edge and is curious about mediumship or how to just be more a spiritual being, that they reach out to Laurie, because I definitely think that she feels like a great presence for many people who are just ready for knowing themselves, loving themselves, and connecting beyond.
Thank you so much. It's, they say when you're ready, the teacher appears.
Yeah.
And then when you're really ready, the teacher disappears.
Yeah. I love it. Amazing. Well, thank you, Laurie. And thank you, everyone, for joining Critical Conversations. We'll see you at the next one.